For over 35 years, Todd Garner has overseen blockbuster films like Con Air, Anger Management, Triple X, 13 Going on 30, and the Mortal Kombat franchise.
Why are they letting you make these movies?
Join Todd as he shares tips and stories from the front lines of producing in Hollywood.
I'm Adam Sandler.
I'm Rebel Wilson.
This is Jeff Probst.
I'm Kaylee Cuoco.
I'm Eli Roth.
This is Marlon Wayans.
Hey, it's Ed Helms.
This is Shay Mitchell.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin James, and this is The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
What a combination.
Welcome back to The Producer's Guide. I'm Todd Garner. Today's guest is Kelly McCormick, a visionary action producer whose films have grossed an astonishing $2.9 billion worldwide. Co-founding 87 North Productions with her husband, David Leitch, Kelly has produced such films as The Fall Guy, Bullet Train, Nobody 2, and Atomic Blonde. She's executive produced Deadpool 2 and Hobbs and Shaw, and her upcoming slate includes Ballerina Overdrive, starring Uma Thurman, Fast and Loose, starring Will Smith, Red Shirt, starring Channing Tatum, and the Violent Night sequel. Kelly has been a huge champion of stunt community, where she and David created the first ever stunt designer credit for The Fall Guy, and were instrumental in working with the Academy to introduce a Best Achievement in Stunt Design Oscar in 2028. Before 87 North, Kelly was EVP at Sierra Infinity, packaging such films as Whiplash, Hell or High Water, Nightcrawler, and Manchester by the Sea. Today, we have a deep dive into all things action, storytelling, and the stunt world. Enjoy. All right, I'm here with Kelly McCormick. Hello, Kelly. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Todd? It's so good to see you.
I wore my Mortal Kombat 2 stunt shirt in your honor because I wanted to impress you and David to make sure you guys know that I am a kindred spirit in the stunt world. You've had an unbelievably meteoric career. You were an executive for a while and then became a producer and then just decided I'm going to produce all the biggest action movies that are being made at once. I want to back up to how you kind of got to where you are now. Walk me through kind of the early years and the path that led you to Summit.
Well, Todd, I'm a failed documentarian, is the truth. Like that was in college, I wanted to be a documentarian, and I got an internship. I was at Northwestern. I got an internship with Bill Curtis, if you remember that booming voice from Anchorman, and also all of his newscasting. He was the only shop in town other than Oprah, and like somehow, like I got my foot in the door, and was making like series and shows and interstitials with him like while I was still in school, and I was like on my way, and I was so excited about like my documentary career. And then he kind of exposed me to the hard truth of like lack of truth in television docs, and I was on the front lines trying to sell people through to like put their 15 minutes of shame on our shows, and it backfired a couple of times really early in my career, and I was like, I got to get out of this.
But before we move on from documentaries, what made you want to be in documentaries? What was the catalyst that made you think like that was a good path for you?
I wanted to change the world, man. I wanted to change the world.
Did you see a documentary or something that said, I want to make something like that, or just had a general feeling of wanting to change the world?
I was obsessed with Errol Morris. I was obsessed with like, you know, just kind of old school, sort of like slow burn, deep dive into, you know, kind of like subject. Honestly.
Which is, by the way, the total opposite of what you're doing now.
I know.
Let's blow up as much shit as humanly possible.
I think, not to spoil the like tagline of my life, but it's like, I think because I started in docs, I think I'm trying to find the truth in fiction in these big action movies. And I think it maybe is what's resonating, if that makes sense. Like it's one of the special sauces.
That's Jim Cameron's whole vibe, is he makes giant movies around small, intimate dramas.
Yeah.
Wait. So, okay. So you get in, you look under the hood in Northwestern and you realize, oh, it maybe is not as truthful as it appears. And there's this whole other world out there in scripted. So go from there. Sorry.
I did. Yeah. Because it was like everything had an angle. There was always a perspective. And these people in television docs were really disappointed an awful lot at what was exposed. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't think I want this life, like, you know, dependent on these people who then are disappointed in the end. Let's go to like, storytelling. Let's go to falsities. But I mean, before that, I grew up in a tiny town in Michigan, and we didn't have, I mean, cable was around, but it could not extend to my home. Like, we were so dirt road. I mean, literally a dirt road. I walked a mile to the bus. Like, it was like, it was really, really rural. And so what we did, other than sort of hyper co-curricular activities, is we went to the movies all the time because we couldn't get anything on TV. So, twice a week I was going to the cinema, either the, second play, at the Sun Theater in Williamston, Michigan, or all the way to Okemos, which was like 30 minutes away, to watch the big blockbusters every weekend. And that's what we did. And so it was and my mom was a librarian, so a lot of books. And so it was all like sort of like that was like where I spent a lot of my time. So I knew it was like storytelling in some way. And then I leaned into the doc just to kind of go back to that like foundation.
And then once you graduated from Northwestern, what happened?
So I stayed in docs for a second. I ended up like, oh, maybe I'll just run these things. And I got the opportunity to run really big series like Doctors Without Borders and, this women doctor show, a lot of doctor shows somehow. And I'd send the crews out and bring the material back. So like it was teaching me sort of the production, the manufacturing side of producing, it turns out, instead of just the storytelling. And that still wasn't satisfying enough because then I wasn't in the story. But like I got a lot of experience for like a year while I was trying to find a job in film in New York because I was like, I'm not going to LA. I'm like a contrarian. And it was like really fomenting some knowledge that I have now of like how to help a line producer get through the day and how to, sort of like manage that side of things that I think is really unique. And then I ended up getting a job on the Stepford Wives as Frank Oz's assistant. It was my first assistant job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a crazy, crazy production because it was like the most overscheduled, over budget of any movie that Sherry Lansing had ever done, I think.
And was Scott Rudin around?
Scott Rudin was around a lot that summer.
Wow. Holy hell. Well, you got to see firsthand.
We were shooting in New York, and and he and Paul Rudnick was the writer, and he and Paul were really close. And so Scott would show up and hang out on set. And my goal was like, how do I take care of Scott Rudin? Like, I want to work for that guy at the time. And, I'll take care of Frank. Frank's like, great. We got a good thing going. But like, if I never want Scott to worry about a water. I never want Scott to worry about anything, And in the meantime, like, we ended up developing a bit of a relationship to the point where when someone left his development department, he slid me in during post on Stepford Wives. So I worked for Scott for 2.5 years in his development department.
What was the vibe on set, given that it was overscheduled, over budget? You had the biggest movie stars in the world working on that movie, a massive writer, a massive director, and the biggest producer at the time. What was Scott saying? Like, don't worry about what Paramount says. Like, it'll be fine. Or, hey, we got to get this shit together. Like, from the inside, what were you seeing?
I mean, to tell tales that I probably shouldn't tell publicly, like, it was a disaster. Like, it was an absolute disaster. And the thing that it taught me most is like, the best case scenario in any movie is making the same movie, everyone making the same movie. Yep. And if you're not, a lot of things are going to go wrong. Yeah. I personally think, not that I know, but I have this sneaky suspicion that Nicole Kidman was there for some kind of deal that she had made with Rudin. I had a sneaky, I don't think anybody was that excited about some of the rest of the cast. And I think that, and quite honestly, Frank was going through an awful lot at the time. He was going through a divorce of a long, long relationship. And it was just spiraling out of control with our sort of leader, sort of like going through more than just making the movie, And so it was like the summer that never ended, and it was just like, here we are again. Like, but the thing that was amazing is like there were moments of magic even in that movie at any given time on set, and that's kind of what sort of like you just followed that along, and then you can continue to follow it along.
And coming off of that movie, that cemented that you wanted to be a producer, or you were like, I just want to follow Scott Rudin around because he's so dynamic and interesting?
I mean, I think Scott is brilliant for all of his flaws, and it's a little dangerous sometimes to talk about him. But like, he was a voracious like consumer of whatever he was obsessed with at the time. I got to witness all of that. I watched him not only figure out how to put the pieces together to, kind of to fine tune development and really find story and, commit to the best version of the film, but also manipulate a movie into happening and manipulate. And honestly, he was doing some really interesting kind of like marionetting of like Hollywood at that time as well, being a bit of a leader in the Paramount sort of like changes that were happening when Sherry was moving, and, sort of like Paramount Vantage was happening, and all of these other things were, when there was that bifurcation of Paramount for that time with MTV, and he was, I could, I could hear that just by being in the office and listening to sort of like that flow. And I was just riveted by like the complexities, more than just like the movie, the complexities of like all of it. And like, it's one of the most challenging problem solving kind of careers, I think, that are incredibly dynamic on any given day. And and that was really, really exciting to me. And then you got story, and then you got to dissect story and like talk to writers and directors and, authors, and just like kind of consume all this like art, all this like genius, in storytelling. And I just was like, oh my God.
How did your perception of what a producer does change over that summer?
Scott's a really powerful producer. And so you could see how much a producer could influence an experience, while also seeing how things can pull away from the plan. And so having to kind of ebb and flow that way and know when you can place where and how to place your power, and and be sensitive to the flow of production too, was something that I was witnessing. But I think that honestly, I was just like, I wasn't a producer before that. So I was just like soaking it all in. And then working with him after that, it was like honing taste, honing style, and then witnessing again, like sort of like how much you can really manipulate different experiences. And, I think one of the hardest things for producers to do is to convert from development to a movie being made.
Yeah.
And I got to watch him sort of like follow the red blinking lights and make choices along the way of like why this made the most sense to make and be able to sell that through. And I think that was incredibly valuable. And it took me a minute to be able to do that, but it was what I was learning then.
So after 2.5 years at Rudin, then what happens?
I actually realized there that like the only thing I could do was be a PA for him, because you couldn't even share information. He wanted privacy. So you could only have your own relationships for as long as that was. And you could only do, and out of New York too, and so I wanted more sort of experience past that. And so I ended up taking this job that Hannah Mangella left for this tiny little company that Andy Fierberg, if you remember him, was a like icon in independent filmmaking back in the day, like, Steven Shainberg, and he was his producing partner, and he produced all kinds of very low budget independent films at the time. And he was partnered with Christina Weiss-Laurie of the Philadelphia Eagles, and she was financing his little division, and we were supposed to be making $1 million movies, and we didn't make very many of them, and I didn't stay very long. But what I was looking for was like on set and like understanding the manufacturing aspect of it as well. I didn't want to just kind of go the development route. And then I was going to quit the business entirely. I did that twice actually in my career. And at that time, Lawrence Mattis of Circle of Confusion saved me. And he took me, and his brother had just moved on from managing with him. So Lawrence, if you remember, managed the Wachowskis, John Spates, he found Simon Kinberg. He was an extraordinary literary manager he still is, out of New York. And he and I had met, and he handpicked me to like play with him in the like New York space. And at that point, he introduced me to all those people. I could develop with them. I could like sort of get to know them. And he also introduced me to Hollywood in a bigger way than I had been introduced before too, where like he'd take me to LA. I'd get to sit in with like some of the biggest agent meetings that I had certainly ever, and were at the top of the top of the food chain. And like I just got to see some of that stuff for the first time. And then he managed David Leitch and Chad Stahelski as well. And I was supposed to be producing for him, but he, I think, always knew that like we weren't going to do a whole lot of producing. And so when I met David and Chad, they asked me if I would be their manager. And I was like, I'm not managing. Like, I don't manage.
Right.
But they're cute and they know a lot about action. And so maybe I'll see if this management thing works with them. And so then we just started talking about scripts and stuff.
This David Leitch, who's your husband, had they done Wick yet?
No, they were still like kind of Avi Lerner second unit. So I saw this opportunity to grow them into studio second unit directors and maybe eventually get them in a director's chair if I could figure out how to manage. And, we ended up attaching David to this Dwayne Johnson project at New Line, like for a hot second. Like, they were really busy I did get them to second unit directing really big movies, and they did it themselves, to be candid. But like they were so busy in that space that it was actually hard to figure out how to get them past that too. And I didn't know what I was doing, so that took time. I wanted to leave the business again. And I was going to, my dad does something really cool. He sets up foundations for nonprofit organizations and merges really big ones as well, like the American Cancer Society. So I was going to leave the business and take that over. This was about 2009, 10. And I was like, I don't think there's a place for me. I don't want to necessarily move to LA. Like, I don't think I've made enough traction in the business and I love it. But like, I don't, I should just go run my dad's company so he can retire.
And where would that have been? Out of Michigan or out of New York?
It would have been out of South Carolina.
Wow. And were you dating David at the time?
No.
Okay.
We barely knew each other, really.
Okay.
I mean, we were talking on the phone all the time to try to figure out stuff. But like, I was like, sending him scripts and like, trying to get him jobs and like hooking him up with different things. And so then I moved to, I decided, I was like, it's weird, but this is really crazy. I called a psychic.
Perfect.
And this psychic says, I'm like, I think I'm going to leave the business. Like, I'm going to get out of this relationship. I'm not going to move to LA. I'm going to do all this stuff. What do you think? She's like, it's a mistake. Get out of the relationship, she said. But like, she's like, I was like, I'm never going to make it in the film world. She said to me, I'd never met her. It was over the phone. She said to me, you will be working at the highest levels in this business if you stick with it, with the biggest talent in the industry. She's like, you have everything that it takes to like really soar. When she said that, I was like, I'm giving LA 10 weeks. And I moved to LA for 10 weeks. And I got the job with Nick Meyer at Sierra Affinity.
Was this psychic recommended or was this like a 1-800 psychic? What was the impetus for calling this person?
She was recommended by the same woman who had set me up with the opportunity to work on the Stepford Wives. So she was like this woman I ran with. She was like not even in the business. She was, I'm a runner. So she had, she was my running partner in Park Slope, like New York. And she's like, you should just call this psychic. Because I mean, obviously on long runs, you're like talking about all your woes. And she's like, I'm tired of listening to your shit, bro. Like, call somebody else. Like, is really what happened, And so like, I called this lady and I like, you send her a couple of things about you, but like nothing. And it wasn't like people like deep dive at that point. Right. And so I'm just like talking. And at some point she's like, stop. She's like, your relationship's going to go beautifully, transition beautifully. You have nothing to worry about there. Everything's going to be fine. You should really consider this industry that you're talking about leaving because you have all that it takes to get to the highest levels there.
Amazing.
And you will be working with the greatest talent that's ever been. And you will be amazed at what happens if you choose that path. And I was like, fuck it. Like,
Amazing.
so literally
Amazing.
October 2010, I moved to LA and I was only going to give it till the end of the year because I was like, it's a psychic. I'm not going to change my life forever. Right.
I'll tell you that when I was an assistant at Columbia Pictures, Hank Azaria gifted me a psychic, and his sister is psychic.
No
way.
way.
And she gave me a reading that had similar vibes because that's why I'm still here. But I'm still waiting for the highest level. I feel like
I don't know. I think you're ready.
I feel like I made it 3/4 of the way there, but I don't know about the highest.
I know. By the way, now I'm like, now what? Psychic? And apparently the psychic died. And so I don't, don't even.
Just as she was hanging out, she's like, wait, I got more to tell you. All right. So wait a second. So
I'm totally lost now. She's gone. I'm lost. I don't even remember her name.
You're stuck at the highest level. Okay. So you go to work for Nick at Sarah Infinity as a CE. What was your title?
It was brand new. So he was just setting up this company and he was like, I don't know why he picked me, but it was like, I ended up curating his slates to sell. So it's a foreign sales financing company. And we were going to be doing some production, which we did Atomic Blonde. But we, at the beginning, it was just like, find packages or help me package projects that I can sell at the international marketplace, and we'll connect the dots. And I got to tell you, I was there longer than any job I'd ever had until this one, and it was great for me. It was I did package projects. I found projects that he sold, and I packaged them, and I was able to curate what it takes to convert. I was able to curate my taste, my style, and actually the proof on somebody else's watch that they worked, because we made a lot of hits out of there in the independent world, from Manchester by the Sea to Nightcrawler to Whiplash to any number of other films. And I was part of the analysis of the value, who else we should add, is it going to work or is it not going to work, and then got to see how it worked then past foreign sales and being made, but then also into distribution. So it was a really great education for me, and I loved it, honestly. It was really, really fun. But at the same time, Nick wasn't paying me very much. And so I was like, hey, bro, can I keep David and Chad on the side because they don't want to stay with Lawrence. They want to come with me. And I could funnel action scripts to them and we could maybe get them going in the action space. And he was like, yeah, sure. Okay, you can have those guys. I think he thought that they would just go away eventually, but honestly, because of that, I was reading scripts for both Nick, but action scripts for Nick, but then also for David and Chad. And that is where the John Wick script came from, is Nick Meyer's shop. And it was building as Olivia Megaton and Bruce Willis. And, those shops get stuff really early when there's all these rumors and only people are reading, they're not really committing. And so then they both fell off. And then I was like, hey, I had Chad and David meet Basil as their, and actually it was Peter Lawson there at the time as well. And hey, they can be your second unit guys, thinking maybe they'll be so impressed that in the independent space, I could get them something more than that, but maybe not. I was doing that with a lot of producers, maybe including you, Todd.
Wait, so at that time, what people may not or may not know was that script was originally like a 70-year-old guy kind of at the end of his life. It was more like Unforgiven than the John Wick we know now, which is why they were after Bruce. And so Bruce had fallen off and the director had fallen off, and it was a clean script, or did they have Keanu at this point?
It was clean, but I heard rumor that they were maybe going to Keanu, and David and Chad had already met Basil. And so Chad and David knew Keanu from from The Matrix.
Yeah.
And Keanu had just done his directorial debut in Man of Tai Chi. He was always experimental with like newer directors and stuff. And I was like, maybe you guys should just like knock on Keanu's door and see if he really is reading this thing and like see if there's a dot to connect there. And I'll be damned if like they didn't. And Keanu was like, yeah, I'm kind of reading it. And you guys deserve your shot. It's time. And then somehow like overnight, it turned into, okay, the guys have a shot at what we didn't know was going to be a huge hit, but like at John Wick with Keanu Reeves, who, by the way, was sort of on a wane at that moment in his career, sort of like he wasn't on a upward trajectory per se.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be real. That was true. Secondarily, it's a script about a guy whose dog is killed and he goes to avenge the dog. I mean, that was the thing about it all over town. It wasn't like, oh my God, John Wick has become available. It was a thing that everybody had to kind of dig in. And truthfully, the fact that it was Keanu and the fact that there was this whole new thing that was created by the guys called Gun Fu is what made it John Wick. It wasn't like it was like such a huge piece of IP or such a huge idea. It was a bit of a revenge story that you kind of seen before.
It is nothing like this original script. And you're right, like not that many people wanted it. It wasn't like a hot property. It was like, and my goal was just, can I get these guys directing? Like, I just want to get them directing, It was enough, though. I mean, Keanu was enough for Lionsgate to go sell that internationally and get $28 million. By the way, Nick Myers passed on it after I had packaged it on the side. Like, all of these pieces were coming together, and he passed on it.
Oh, my God.
He also passed on The Purge. I mean, there are a lot of, like, we made a lot of great movies, but, like, and we're very close. But, like, there are a couple of things that, like, he could have just flown. But anyways, and by the way, it wasn't that easy for Lionsgate to sell, like, internationally. They 28 million it was the budget. And but it really flew at that point. Once like Lionsgate sold it, we were making it. I wasn't making it. I only put it kind of together. It was really Basil's thing, and the guys were making it basically. So and then obviously that happens. I'm still working at Nick's all the way through Atomic Blonde. So
before you get there, when do you start dating David?
Much later. We were like, he was just kind of becoming my best friend, like as I was managing him through all this weirdness.
Right.
At the end of John Wick is when it was right before John Wick when we started really kind of like, hanging out.
Right.
But I had been his manager and we had been sort of best friends for like almost 4 years. And like, I mean, I thought he was like way too cool for me. And like, I was trying to hook him up with all these like hot people. And like, it was never, but I will say he was my gateway to understanding action. So I had come from Rudin and Independent and New York and Docs. Like, there's no business for me to be in the action space. But I think what he showed me is how great action is about arcing into the arc of the character, and that it doesn't have to be spectacle. It can be spectacle, but it needs to be emotional if it's spectacle, and it always needs to be emotional. And to me, I always say it's like action is this physical manifestation of melodrama. And to me, that like is all I need to know where I insert as a storyteller in my own right. That's what he taught me. And that's why I could go from docs all the way to committing to this niche of action, because it's actually even more melodramatic than if you don't have a physical manifestation, if that makes sense.
Right. All the while knowing that you've got the psychic in your back pocket. So it's all going to work out anyway.
Yeah.
So he does John Wick with Chad. At some point, you guys create this company called 87 North. First of all, what is the significance of 87 North?
Yeah, 87 North was our desire to have a company that we could make smaller action films that we could really catapult less likely action stars into the, as a lead of the film, and be able to make some bold choices and make some more original sort of like stories, because it was like less dangerous than action at a bigger budget. So that was, and then obviously having a home for David's giant movies, which kind of like started, so we sort of bifurcate into rare air, sort of Leachian, sort of like sized films, in the $100 million space, to 30 and under. And so we kind of like ping pong in those two places. Not to mention give new action directors opportunity, or even just regular directors, to do action that is protected and supported by us in that lower space where they can kind of learn and play and not have so much against them, and, with us being kind of the guardrails along the way.
So why do you think that David and Chad are so good at what they do? Like, what is the secret sauce in your mind of those two?
David is an exceptional storyteller, and he is a very detailed storyteller. And I think it's past the action for him. He's like the opposite of me. It's sort of like I found action in him, and I've witnessed storytelling in this guy who happened to come from stunts. Usually an action guy is like so stunt and action heavy that they don't see more than that. And I think David has always been somebody who's like got the other thing, and he just continues to evolve it and grow it. And the action is almost weirdly secondary. But it's so in his bones that like it's going to be super powerful when it comes out. I mean, there's not a lot of action in Bullet Train. But people think it's such an action movie because he's already got that on his shoulder. But if you really look, it's like there's not a ton of action in that movie.
Right.
But it's a phenomenal film. It's a fucking fantastic picture.
And one thing that David does and Chad both that they do is even in their action sequences, they tell a story, emotional story within the beats of the action. It's not just
Yes.
action for action's sake. It's propelling the character forward through the action in all of the movies, even movies that Chad and David were stunt guys on, that all of
Yes.
those movies, you can tell that the guys they were working with at the highest level, The Matrix, for a perfect example, those action sequences built a story. And so inside of it, those stunt guys were telling a story through their movement and the action.
Yes. I mean, they taught me that really early on that they would have an actor come down to train, and they were looking for strengths and weaknesses in that human being, and then how to exploit them through the arc of the character so that it felt really real in the process. We don't always do this, but they're of the mind that like the more the actor does, the stronger the experience is for the audience. That's sometimes hard to talk anybody into for all the reasons, the effort that goes into it, the discipline, the danger, the everything. And sometimes you don't do that, but like when, sometimes you do. And that's where they were hoping to be really early on in the process. You can say that, and we've said that for years, and people still don't quite have what David has
Right.
in specific, but Chad too, where it's like, it's there's something past that is like, you can't articulate that.
Yeah.
I think really is the thing that like is just the magic of them.
It's so great that David and Chad did this because I can't tell you how many times I've used with an actor. Well, I know Keanu Reeves did it. He trained and he does. I mean, if you don't want to train and Keanu did it. I'm telling you, so many times with an actor, I'll be like, don't do it. And it's funny because even like Carl Urban in Mortal Kombat 2, he actually talks about it. He goes, look, I know Keanu does this stuff, but I'm happy to let the other guy. Like it's become like the line in the sand now. Hey, do you want to be like Keanu, or do you want to let the stunt guys do it? And then I worked with Alan Richson, who won't let anybody do anything. He does everything himself. He's a beast.
Yeah, he's a beast.
So what is the actual title 87 North mean?
Well, it's actually 8711 Aviation Boulevard is where the original sort of like dojo was for David and Chad.
Okay.
And so when David and I peeled off, we decided to name ours North because we wanted to be in like a more northern part of Los Angeles and dominate the rest of northern. It also felt sort of positive. It's really hard to name a company.
It is. It is very hard.
And we wanted that touchstone of still being like sort of sister companies with with Chad's thing, and the touchstone of like WIC, which David was so instrumental in, and so we sort of like it sounded cool. And everybody always called 8711 87 anyway. So we were like, you know what, let's just do that. And then we wanted to be up north so that we were closer to actors. They could train out of the gym easier. We could be more in Hollywood and less sort of like down by the airport. And yeah, that's kind of where the name came from. I don't know. Maybe we'll change it someday.
No, it's great. No, you can't now. So you're wearing the hat. You can't now. All right. So here's the big question I have. What made you guys want to be producers? Why even do it? Because you could be he could be a director, and you could be working with him, and you guys could have a massive career. What was the incentive to become producers and start this company and decide that you want to create a company? Like, I know why, to give people chances, but what was the specific reason of becoming producers?
Well, I think it's because of me, honestly. I think we
Okay.
are
Oh, yeah,
producers
okay.
because
Okay.
of
Yes.
me. Like, we are very involved. I'm very involved in David's films, like super deeply involved in David's films. And it gives me a place in his pictures that is legitimate and professional and real. And I am a asset as a regular old producer too, but very, very sensitive to the whole picture. Like, I am overly responsible to the studios, and honestly, he's probably the most on budget, on schedule director at his level, because I won't let him not be, because that's my job and I want to be good at my job. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it ends up being this really kind of like beautiful opportunity and requirement in our pictures that, like, I mean, he probably will direct things that I don't produce, but that'll probably only be in name only, if that makes sense, because we're
Mm-hmm.
such a sort of like symbiotic kind of coupling. um and then as far as doing more, it's just the opportunity to do more. It's just, there are so many more stories to tell. There's so many more people to work with. And there's, an educational part of it that we really enjoy. And we are sort of all in. We are like, we don't have much of a life past it, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Right.
So I think, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's too whimsical, but I think that that's sort of where it all kind of stemmed from. I just had aspirations to be able to make a bigger thing and become a bit of a cornerstone of action in the industry.
For you specifically, I asked you before, and you said you didn't have enough experience to know. How has your view of what a producer is and does changed, and what is it morphed into?
Early on, like, partially because I produced Atomic Blonde with, Nick Meyer. That's like one of my first big credits. I put David on that movie. It was an independent experience, and you end up having, we ended up having a lot of opportunity, a long leash, as I call it, like a lot of controls that I was shocked by, if that makes sense. Like, because we didn't really have anybody. We were, until like late in the process, it was Charlize who we were kind of trying to appease. Like, she was kind of, we wanted to make sure she was in, and like that was it. And so it was like very strange that like we didn't have bosses. And then honestly, we move on to Deadpool, and it felt the same. It was like, sure, like we had Emma and like the, juggernaut of Deadpool and Ryan being like our North Star. But like, it was kind of the same. It was like, as long as we were sort of like flowing, like we could do a lot. And it was almost like early on, I was watching that and being part of that roller coaster. And now I know how to convert it. Like,
Hmm.
now I know I expect a long leash and I push for a long leash, because the movies are going to be better the more controls we have and the more we shape them, so long as we're making the same movie as our partners in every way, whether it be the studio or independent financing or talent or anybody. And so long as that's been articulated, like there is the strength that a producer has to kind of guide that into the best version possible is something that I've learned.
And so you are in very rarefied air at your company and the place you guys hold in the business, and you're in the best genre in terms of international you can be in. What have you noticed in terms of the shifting sands of the business from your perspective, from when you were at Sarah Infinity to now? And how have you adjusted to that?
It's a really crazy time. Last year, I made 6 films, and 4 of them were not at Universal. So our deal is at Universal. And, they were at independent financing companies or, partial Amazon or full Amazon. And what I realized is that like, that's where you have to kind of, if you want to make a lot, that's where you have to play. You have to be nimble enough to be able to make movies at different sizes. You have to be able to want to partner and like learn the strokes of different folks as it is. We've been so busy that like when you sort of get your head out of the sand for all of that, you wake up. This has just happened to me not that long ago because I made 2 movies this year, like back to back. And like, I woke up and I was like, oh my God, like things are different in Hollywood now. Like I got to make all that stuff just like I did during the strike, just like I did during COVID. And things have changed again, like really dramatically. So I'm trying to adjust to this, like almost like French when I was down, like still speaking English, like for like all this time, And it's almost like I want to try to stay posy, like, because like there's still gonna be stuff being made. And like, you just have to be nimble and thoughtful about it. And we are kind of a safe brand and a safe genre, but it is kind of depressing. And there are more oversights and it's coming from a place of fear that I really have not been used to. And I think that's very dangerous for the business.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about oversight, you're talking about in terms of the executive suites and the people that are overseeing the movies. And at your level, you said those 2 huge movies that you made back to back, and I'm sure since then, you did not have a lot of studio interference. How is that manifesting even in your world?
I mean, all the way down to a costume.
Wow.
And I've never had that in my life. Like, and it's like, guys, like, he looks good. Like, and I've made 6 movies with you and my movies look great. Like, are you serious right now that the guy shouldn't be in tweed? Like, I am shocked. Like, don't you have more important things to do? Like, I'm good at this, Like, literally that one sort of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got my costume through, but it was just like conversations that I never used to have, Like, and it makes it harder to lead because you think that you've got this ability, and you're sort of like, you were in this position where these things were like, I'm definitely a reporter. They know everything that's going on, but there's like safety in me. And then I'm leading the team. And then they go like, yeah, no, not that. And I'm like, but we already kind of manufactured that because you guys always say that it's good. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and that's the part I'm most frustrated with is like, I really try to be a clean, clear leader for the filmmaking team. And if you can't do that because they're scared and they're flip-flopping and weird, then like, it just is not efficient and effective. And it really frustrates me.
Yeah, I wonder and have wondered about this because it definitely is rooted in fear for sure. And I think that even more specifically, they have an opinion and they have their taste, but they're so worried about guessing what their bosses will want all the way up the line that they don't have any real opinion because it's not really their opinion. And I do feel like that has changed. So probably what you were feeling early on was, yeah, I like that, Kelly. That looks great. No, perfect. Go do it. But now it's like, oh, well, what will my boss think? Does my boss like tweed? I've actually never seen my boss wear tweed. Did they like tweed? Are they going to think tweed is like too soft? Are they going to think it's too hard? I don't know. Is tweed the right thing? Because they don't know what their bosses will think. And quite frankly, at the top, I don't think the bosses know.
100%.
I think the real highest level bosses, I'm not talking about Donna, I'm talking about even higher than that. I think they're just so driven by data that they don't even know. And that data
100%.
is coming at them so fast, and technology is changing so fast that they're like, kids like this. No, wait, hold on. They like this. Wait, it's 12:30. They like this. Hold on. And you're chasing this amorphous thing that the data is telling them. And every day they're having these staff meetings. It's like, remember yesterday we said we want romantic comedies? We don't want romantic comedies anymore. We want action comedies. Wait, hold on. We want action comedies with heart. Nope, take the heart out. Like, they're just, and so every day these poor execs are coming out of these meetings rattled and going, does Kelly have action with heart? I can't remember. We should call Kelly and make sure there's no heart in this because we don't want heart anymore. It's like that.
Yes.
I feel that feeling. I hear it all the time.
It's crazy.
And even the other thing that's weird, what I really started to notice is I'll submit things to people like scripts or whatever, and they'll call me and go, we really like this, but um, do you think the script is perfect, and or will you do work on it? I'm like, what? Of course we'll do work on it. Like, what are you talking about? They're even afraid to upset me. Like, I would rather
Yes,
pass than tell you the script's not good enough. Like, what? What are we doing? Our jobs are to find good ideas and mold those good ideas into great scripts and mold those great scripts into fantastic movies and take those fantastic movies and market them with excellence. That's our job.
yes,
Like, what- but
yes,
but I don't think even I think now these poor executives, it's been so beaten out of them that they're like afraid to tell you what they think because what they think may agree with you and it may not be what their bosses want.
totally.
And again, the only thing that matters is what the audience wants. And I think that we're spending so much time in the process worrying about what the people in the mix are going to think that we're forgetting about what our goal is, which is what you said, which is to tell great stories that are in these giant canvases that have this fantastic action from a very specific person that is really fucking good at his job. That's it. And it's like the problem is we try to game that system and be like, well, what if David's off today? There's some data here that says maybe we could lean on this data. And you can't. You have to trust the people that you're in business with and trust the producers to know enough to get the best out of all those people.
Yeah,
And like you said early on about that summer you had, that was the never ending summer. That's because everybody was not on the same page and everybody was doing different things. That you can be worried about. Right. But if
yes,
everybody understands what the movie they're making and we've agreed on the movie we're making, which is part of the problem because the sands are shifting so quickly with social media and data that we're trying to react like this. And as we all know, it's a 5 to 10 year process to make a movie. You can't switch on a dime. You can't go,
no,
well, now, hey, K-pop demon, can it have either demon hunters or K-pop in it? Because that's what everybody wants now. Like, no, this is Bullet Train. We can't do that. Like, that's not happening.
yes,
So we can't
yes,
shift on a dime. And so as long as we're like going, oh, this is the movie we're making, let's get the most talented people we can to make that movie and just set it off and keep kind of moving the ball down the court from the sidelines, kind of keep and let the people on the field play their best game. Very hard for executives to
it's
do right
so
now.
hard right now. And it is, and I think they're scared, and their boss is scared, and so everybody's like sort of like feeding into like I don't know, and what they used to be able to say yes to now they can't. They got to run it back up the fucking flagpole. But I think the problem is like I don't have kids, but what it feels like to me is the kids are running the dinner. The audience being the kids.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, if you parent, like, your kid is gonna, like, sort of lead the whole family into what you're doing, like, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes, you know what I mean? Because the kid doesn't know, and you have to have the confidence to be able to tell the kid what actually they'll prefer.
Well, like, yeah, it's like if you ask a kid, they're going to say, what do you want for breakfast? Cake. Right. That's so if you try to just make cake for breakfast, it might work once, but it's going to make you sick. Right. So what you're saying is
Yes!
you want to give them a really good, delicious meal that ends with cake. And the kids will be like, this is more amazing than just eating cake. But I think what you're right is we're reducing it down to just trying to make cake because everybody loves cake.
Yes, even the tent poles that are working, like, really well have done that too. They've dumbed them down to the point where they could have been so much better films, and they had the audience, you know what I mean? And then
Right.
they followed the data to get to some nonsensical fill in the blank, and then they didn't have the gumption to realize that, like, actually the audience would be stronger and would prefer it if you just stuck to your guns, like, trust yourself kind of, you know?
Yeah.
And that is really infuriating too, because then it just perpetuates the bubble we're in of like accepting that like the data delivers when it actually, the franchise would be more powerful if you would have told a better story, and the audience would be more powerful and more there longer and more completely if you didn't sort of like just fill the, like do the assignment and fill the holes. Like there's so much
Right.
more that you could have done with some of the stories that have worked lately.
And in terms of filling the holes, you're right. So there's two huge problems right now with studios, and what's amazing is it's like there's two huge problems with studios. Yet From a studio perspective, and I would include independents in all of this, from their perspective, it's the audience isn't there and the business is declining. But I posit that it's your problem because I think you're creating the problem that's perpetuating the problem. So what happens is they say, the audience isn't there, the business is shrinking. We only have 11 slots, which is crazy because I don't even know where that number comes from. But we only have 11 slots. 8 of them are going to be undeniable movies that are IP and sequels and this stuff that always quote unquote works. So you only have 3 slots for anything original, right? And so that's the problem. The problem is that way of thinking. First of all, that there's 11. Second of all, that you can only make things that are quote unquote undeniable, that is IP or sequels. And third, that you only have 3 slots for these sort of independently minded original pieces of material. All of that is fucking broken. And the reason why, and I remember when the shift happened, there used to be a time where there were mavericks running this business. You know, Sherry Lansing, you mentioned. You know, Joe Roth, Terry and Bob.
Ovitz.
Right?
Yes.
By the Ovitz. Greenlit movies. And then somehow there was a shift to, well, I don't want that responsibility because if the movie fails, I'm going to get fired. And and by the way, the first move used to be, we'll fire the marketing guys because it was a great idea. I made a great movie. The marketing guys screwed it up. Then the marketing people, not just guys, women too, were like, hey, wait, you gave us crap we couldn't sell, man. Why are you firing us? So then that person said, fine, let marketing in. They deserve a vote. And then, international is like, whoa, wait, marketing gets in, we get in. And then publicity is like, hold up, you got to do people that we can get covers for. And then suddenly you got 30 people in a room, right? So here's what I want anyone to do who thinks this is a good idea. Put 15 people in an RV and then just sit in the middle of the freeway and go, where should we go?
Totally.
Anywhere. Just where should we go? Should we go to dinner? Should we go to an amusement park? Where should we go? We're going on vacation. You can't get 15 people to decide on anything. So
you cannot.
So you end up 15 people probably go, I like Disneyland. Let's go to Disneyland. Then the next time you ask them, where should we go? Just go to Disneyland again. Until you can't want to go to Disneyland anymore. That's the way greenlight committees are right now. You can't get 15 people, and I think the rooms are bigger than that, to decide on anything. So what keeps on happening is they keep going to Disneyland, right? It's like the easiest place to go. Right. Everybody loves Disneyland, but eventually even people get tired of Disneyland, you know? And so that's the other big problem, is that in not wanting to be the person that makes a decision, which is so weird, because when I got in this business, that's all anybody wanted was greenlight. That's what you wanted. You wanted, give me the ball. And I think that we've either bred that out of this business, or that the people who are hanging out in these jobs don't necessarily think that that's important anymore. And so they'd rather make movies that deliver value for the shareholders, which is the craziest thing to say about the movie business, because it's not the reason you or I got with. Because I've been doing this now. I have 60 something episodes. I have never once, when I asked the question, why did you become a producer, have somebody say to make sure that I create great value for a shareholder on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, no, there's nobody in it for that.
I doubt when David goes, I wonder if that take is good. Does this deliver shareholder value on a quarterly basis? Quarterly basis. This is insane. So this is the problem we're in right now. And so
it is. And it's been happening for decades, right?
Ellison and Shell getting Paramount, in theory, is a great thing, because it's a singular person going, these are the kind of movies I want to make, and I want to make all kinds of different things. And so if that holds true, that's great for the business. I wish we could go back to when Warner's was Warner's and Paramount was Paramount and Sony was Columbia, and it was just movie business, because you had people that really loved movies, that wanted to just make movies, and in wanting to make good movies, delivered value for the shareholders on a quarterly basis. That was the byproduct of making good movies, rather than the tail wagging the dog.
But I think in general, though, it's gotten so expensive to make a movie, and I think we've got to find a way to make them for less in order to have those freedoms of being able to prove that there's still an audience, and I think there is, if you can get the people there and you can tell them stories that are really exciting, like they are still, wanting to go to the cinema, and stream, by the way, which is also kind of weirdly declining. But it's like they want to have long form story as much as they do short form. And it's almost like we have to reteach the world what a great movie is, and get them excited about like that kind of storytelling, because it's gotten really diluted for these reasons that you're talking about.
Well, this has happened several times before. We have huge overblown movies. The studios, they had musicals that were costing too much. Cleopatra cost too much. And then these maverick filmmakers come in behind and go, what about this? This doesn't cost a lot. You can point to all the different iterations where the gangster movies of the 50s supplemented all the big overblown musicals of the 30s and 40s. Then the filmmakers of the 70s came in, Coppola and these guys, and Scorsese came in and showed you, okay, you can do it without costing a lot of money and make something that you'll remember forever and it'll stick with you. And then you can remember when Steven Soderbergh broke through with Sex, Lies, and Videotape in the early 90s, because we were coming out of the 80s explosion of big, huge, overblown action movies that ultimately just became explosions with pithy one-liners. And so I think that we're in the same port right now, right? We're in this place where all the big ships are in this crazy bottleneck of, we can do anything. We can show you anything. And what's separating the wheat from the chaff is when you have a really emotional, good story at the center of it. You think about Titanic as like the perfect example of that, the tiniest little drawing room love story with two teenagers inside of this huge spectacle. But very few people, when they talk about Titanic, they talk about what? They talk about standing on the edge of that boat saying, I'm the king of the world, or the thing at the end where, she selfishly kills him, but not letting him on the board. They remember those two moments. They don't remember how that ship split in half and then it and the person, no, they care about the characters. And so I think that two things are going to happen now. One is that filmmakers like yourself are going to keep telling those great emotional stories that are going to break through the clutter. And two, technology is going to rescue us, even though it seems like it's drowning us right now. If it can, in fact, make stuff cheaper and give the studios the comfort of not having to make a $300 million movie, but make a $75 million movie and have the same look, then we'll be able to make more of those. Those are the two things I'm going to say.
I think so. I totally agree. And I think it's, I can't wait for the time where we realize the sort of tool that AI can be, rather than sort of, again, fear of what it will do.
Hey, and by the way, David of all people knows, I can remember, and I'm sure David and I worked together as a stuntman. I know Chad and I have. I can remember when these poor dudes would have to get launched off a ramp that was an explosion. It was basically like a board and a grenade, and it would air compress, shoot them, and ankles would get blown and knees would get blown out. And I remember when Michael Bay, I think it was Pearl Harbor, goes, I'm going to use digital stuntmen. And I was like, great. I don't have to like watch guys get their ankles blown out. Like, technology can actually help us and make things safer and better and cheaper, and not have, people risking their life. So I know that David's been at the forefront of it, because I'm sure he's been using Unreal Engine forever, because that's the first guys to adopt that were stunt guys. Rather than just dudes in front of a cardboard box, you could actually show kind of motion capture stuntmen inside of a scene in a rough way and be able to manipulate the choreography.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part, though, is that, like, I do feel like we have to value the human sort of addition and component. And some of that is the stunt community. And you're on a set and you're making Fall Guy, and, you got Logan Holiday, the driver, who's doing stunts that are world record breaking and that are highly dangerous, but incredibly epic, of like, soaring over a man-made crevice that we created for that incredible stunt. And you're making those dreams come true for those guys. And they do feel kinetic, and they do feel like more human, and they do influence the experience of the film, like, and so there's a place and time for all of it, but there's like, and it's important for lots of reasons to find that relationship and like, commit to a mandate, and but that protects both, that like can add value, that can make it cheaper, that uses the tool for a tool, but it also sort of is very much sort of based in humanity too, and keeping jobs in the stunt community as well. So it's like we're in that conversation at the company right now in a really exciting way. We just held a stunt previs showdown. We do this thing through our foundation where we're trying to get guys and gals to like, have their work seen, educate them on sort of like next level, sort of like stunt performance and choreography. And 10 teams get a script the night before. They shoot for 6 hours, edit for 4, and then we judge the ones and sort of like give a bunch of awards. We had 250 stunt performers and choreographers come to the sort of award presentation. There's the light is on at 87 for all of the stunt performers out there, and there is an opportunity to continue for them thriving in the business. We just have to kind of like it's a new time to calibrate. For sure.
Yeah. Well, look, I made Mortal Kombat 2. There's nothing like two guys kicking at each other and smacking each other around. There is a video game, obviously, 30 years of a video game that does that, but there's nothing that feels like when real people go at it and in a really fun, cool way, also safe, cool way. So let's talk about stuntmen for a second, because like I said, I've got my Mortal Kombat stunt shirt on. You guys did great work, both to create a new category in the credits, and two, to get the Academy Award finally for choreographers. So tell me about like that effort, how that came about, and how kind of where that is headed for people who don't know.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a long time coming. There have been folks who have been doing the hard work of like continuing to show what the contribution of the stunt departments are to the Academy for years and years and years. The truth is, stunt performers don't always understand or like bureaucracies. And so they needed kind of an ambassador that could sort of help the language barrier of like, we deserve this. And like, okay, but so do a lot of other departments. So like, how do we, but David is not in the director's branch of the Academy. He stayed in the production technology branch. And when he did that, it was sort of like, oh, wait, maybe there's a reason for this. Like, we just really were just busy and he didn't think about it. But then it was like, maybe he can carry a mantle in this way where he can kind of help become an ambassador. And part of his awesome legacy, I think, is, sort of what drove us too. And then we just started having conversations with Bill Kramer and, and Tenny, a lot of folks at the Academy. And there's a real desire to like make sure that the Academy stays relevant, that like they're talking to the audiences that are out there in mass for more commercial film. And wouldn't that, acknowledging that department's contribution be something that sort of like was beneficial to both? And so then we just started to try to have those deeper conversations about it, what it would be required. It was Bill Kramer who was like, some people don't understand. A lot of it was education, by the way, inside the Academy and like exactly what they contributed, because there's a lot of people in the Academy who aren't even on set sometimes. Like there's so many amazing artists who do so many different things that you don't even think about, like that they wouldn't know what the stunt department's contribution would be, But he was like, they see it as a tech job. They see it as a technical contribution. It's called a coordinator, not a designer. And it's like, okay, but like they're doing what a hair designer does. They're doing what and so he was like, if you could change that moniker, like just literally just switch it to include design, it helps brand it as what it is, which is like, a department that is, artistic as well as technical, which is really what all departments are on a film set, And so we work to do that. And, we're trying to encourage more people to make sure that they get that additional credit. It's a stunt designer and coordinator. Is kind of like what has been approved by, the guilds and the Academy. And, and again, sort of like bless them as creative partners in the process too, because the Academy is really about the arts.
Amazing.
So, yeah. So then it was just kind of a lot of other conversations past that, and sort of, mostly education internally, and then a lot of goodwill. People really saw it as, a cornerstone in filmmaking since the beginning, and and incredibly important. And by the way, one of the obstacles too is like, so who does get the credit, right? Who gets the award? Because there's so many participants in the department. Arguably, that's the case with all departments. So it's the head of that department, obviously, who should get it and give, if there are more, give those too. So it's been really exciting to be a part of it. And I think it has kind of like planted our flag as leaders in the industry and in our genre. That's been really, really exciting and powerful.
Amazing. So if I was to say to you, what is an 87 North movie? Like, if I'm looking to submit you something, what would be sort of the answer to that question?
Action. And I don't know, it's like Mapplethorpe, you know it when you see it, kind of a thing.
Right.
But but I think I think there's always just a little bit of a unique component to it, whether it be a bold choice in, in an arc of a character, in in who the hero is, in the backdrop, in the big idea, and then other than David films, it's like, big ideas in small packages is really what we're looking for. And with David, it's I just want him to do something that excites him. And I think it's really, really special that he goes out and does a little bit different take on a genre in the action sort of like, sort of arc of options. Um, every time out. Like, I love that he, has made Not Your Daddy's neo noir. I love that he's made, a buddy comedy in Hobbs and Shaw that, like, had so much IP behind it that he could just go wild in it. I love that Bullet Train is like basically live action anime. And, he has such a gift in storytelling that he doesn't have to tell the same thing over and over again, and he can really do something different every time out.
Yeah.
But it always feels Leachian. It always still feels like you're on this wild roller coaster of emotions and an amazingly good time.
Amazing. Well, I thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for your time. I always like to wrap up with a very simple question. Best memory on set?
The first thing that came to mind is honestly the fire burn scene in The Fall Guy. I think it's brilliant storytelling. Our sort of North Star was Grosse Point Blank in the radio scene.
Mhm.
And Emily and Ryan are so profoundly talented, and the chemistry was unbelievable. And just that she could sort of like manipulate the situation and, show all of the history of their relationship in an action sequence is
Mhm.
really kind of everything. And it's so emotional and it's so beautiful and it's all these things. And like while we were shooting it, it was like you just had all the feels. Like there was just goosebumps like crazy that we had done something highly original and so iconically sort of like 87 David Leitch, like in one scene. And it just like was a very, very special moment. But honestly, I've had so many because like, COVID with Brad Pitt, like, and, having a laugh every day with these ridiculous things that we were doing on that movie. Oh my God, we've had so many special, special days. And it really is the fact that like every day is like getting out of an escape room, but there's
Mhm.
something magical every single day that kind of keeps you going. And there's a truth and there's a moment and there's an emotion and you're just like, oh my God, we did it again somehow, And that's what that's what I live for.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of The Producer's Guide. If you're a fan of this podcast, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. And if you got any questions about producing, send me a DM on X at Todd_Garner. I want to thank my producer, Steve Delamater. And until next week, I'm Todd Garner. See you then.